The night was cold, the kind of cold that bites through skin and bone, the kind of cold where silence feels heavier than sound. Snow fell slowly, covering the ground in silver sheets under the pale moonlight. Inside his small wooden cabin, the human named Daniel sat by the fire. He had been alone for many weeks, traveling across this frozen planet, trading supplies between colonies. He did not expect company, not tonight, not in a place so empty. Then he heard it. A weak sound, faint as a dying bird, reached his ears. At first he thought the wind was playing tricks, but then it came again, softer, like a broken whisper. Daniel frowned, pulled his coat tighter, and opened the cabin door. The wind rushed in, sharp and freezing, but he ignored it. His eyes scanned the darkness outside. There, half buried in the snow, lay a small figure. For a second he thought it was a child, but as he stepped closer he saw the truth. Her skin was pale silver, glowing faintly under the moonlight. Her hair was tangled with frost, long strands falling across her face, and her body shook with fever. She was an alien girl. Daniel's first thought was simple. This is trouble. He knew enough about the locals to understand that helping the wrong person could bring hunters, soldiers, or worse. But then he heard her soft cry again. Her lips moved, trembling with weak words he could not understand. Her eyes, half closed and burning, looked at him as if begging not to be left behind. Daniel knelt beside her. Her body was burning hot, far too hot for the icy air. He touched her forehead and the heat almost stung his hand. Fever. A strong one. She would not live till morning if left outside. His heart pounded with hesitation. He could walk back inside, close the door, and let the snow finish her story. No one would know. No one would blame him. But as he looked down at her shaking form, he felt something stir inside him. He remembered his younger sister years ago, when sickness had nearly taken her. He remembered staying by her bed, feeding her water spoon by spoon, praying she would live. The memory hit him like fire against the cold night. With a sharp breath, Daniel slid his arms under the alien girl and lifted her. She was lighter than he expected, fragile as if she had not eaten for days. She gasped faintly at his touch, but her body leaned into the warmth of his chest. He carried her into the cabin and shut the door quickly, locking out the biting wind. The fire cracked in the hearth, throwing orange light across the wooden walls. Daniel laid her gently on the small bed in the corner. Her breaths came short and uneven. Sweat ran down her temples despite the cold. Daniel pulled a cloth from his pack, dipped it in water, and pressed it against her forehead. The alien girl flinched at first, then settled, her trembling slowing just a little. Easy, Daniel muttered, though he knew she might not understand. You're safe here. But was she? He stared at her face, at the strange patterns on her skin. Faint blue lines glowed across her arms, pulsing slowly like light underwater. He had never seen markings like that before. Were they tattoos? Or something alive? He leaned closer. For a moment he thought he heard a hum, low and distant, coming from her body, or maybe it was just the fever playing tricks on his ears. Hours passed slowly. The firewood burned lower, but Daniel stayed awake. Every time her breath hitched, he touched her shoulder, whispering soft words. Every time her fever spiked, he wiped her skin again with the wet cloth. Sleep pulled at his eyes, but he refused to close them. At one point, she spoke. Her lips moved in broken sounds, a language Daniel could not follow. But one word came clear, heavy with fear. Hide, she whispered. Daniel froze. He looked at the door. Snow pressed against the windows, silent and calm. But the girl's voice carried weight like a warning. Was someone after her? He sat back down by the fire, staring at both her and the door. His hands clenched into fists. Whatever this girl carried, her sickness, her secrets, her enemies, he was now part of it. He had chosen not to leave her in the snow, and now he would face whatever followed. The night stretched on. The alien girl shivered, burned, and whispered strange words in her fevered state. Daniel stayed awake, the firelight flickering on his face, his eyes never leaving her. Outside, the wind howled over the frozen land. And somewhere in the dark, far beyond the snow, another sound moved, soft footsteps crushing ice. Someone was coming. The fire burned low, filling the small cabin with flickering orange light. Daniel sat hunched on the wooden chair beside the bed, his eyes heavy with fatigue but his mind sharp with worry. He could not sleep. The alien girl lay curled in the blanket, her silver skin damp with sweat, her body still trembling from fever. Every so often, she whispered broken words in her strange tongue. Daniel leaned closer, trying to understand, but the sound slipped through his mind like water. He caught only fragments, fear, pleading, a name he did not know. Her fever was high, far too high. Daniel soaked the cloth again in the bucket of cold water and pressed it against her forehead. The hiss of steam rose faintly where the heat of her skin met the cloth. She moaned softly, twisting in the blanket as if fighting something in her dreams. "Easy," Daniel murmured, brushing a strand of frost-tangled hair from her face. "You're not alone now." He was speaking to her, but also to himself. The hours dragged on. Outside, the storm grew stronger. Snow pounded against the walls and the wind wailed through cracks in the wood. Yet underneath that sound, Daniel thought he heard something else. Faint, distant. A crunch of snow, a shadow moving past the window. But when he stood to look, there was nothing. Only white darkness. He sat back down, his hand tightening around the handle of his knife. Whoever this girl was, she had spoken one word with clarity earlier. Hide. That single word echoed in his mind like a warning bell. Someone was out there. Someone searching. He glanced back at her. Her breathing was uneven, shallow, as if she were running even in her sleep. The blue markings on her arms glowed brighter for a moment, pulsing with each beat of her heart. Daniel leaned closer, fascinated and unsettled. They were not tattoos. They were alive. Suddenly, her hand shot up and grabbed his wrist. Daniel froze. Her eyes opened, glowing faintly, fever-bright, filled with fear. She whispered something quickly, almost desperate. "I don't understand," Daniel said, shaking his head. "You need to rest," but her grip tightened. Her lips moved again, forming one word this time. Hunters. The word was broken but clear. Daniel's stomach dropped. He pulled her hand gently back to the blanket, but his mind raced. Hunters. That explained everything. The fear in her voice, the glowing marks, the footsteps in the snow. Someone wanted her badly enough to chase her into the storm. He checked the door again. The wooden latch looked fragile against the thought of armed men. He set his knife on the table, closer to reach. His rifle leaned against the far wall, but even that felt small comfort if real trouble arrived. Hours passed. Daniel fought to stay awake, his head jerking forward only to snap up again each time. He poured water into the girl's mouth drop by drop, careful not to choke her. She coughed weakly but swallowed. Her skin was still burning, yet the trembling slowed a little. At one point, the fire nearly died. Daniel knelt to feed it more wood, sparks leaping up like tiny stars. The warmth returned, spreading across the cabin. He looked at her face again, pale silver in the firelight. Despite the fever, there was something almost peaceful about her when she lay still. He wondered who she really was. Not just an alien girl, there was more. The way she spoke, the glow of her skin, the warning about hunters. She was someone important. Maybe dangerous. Maybe both. But for now, she was simply someone in need. Daniel sat back down, rubbing his tired eyes. His body begged for sleep, but he knew he could not close them. Not tonight. Not with danger outside. Suddenly the sound came again, louder this time. A crunch of snow close to the door. Daniel stiffened, every muscle ready. He reached for the rifle and aimed it toward the entrance. The storm howled, but beneath it he swore he heard voices. Low, muffled, moving closer. The girl stirred, her eyes flickering open again. She looked at him, weak but knowing. Her lips moved once more. "Don't let them," she whispered before drifting back into fevered dreams. Daniel's grip on the rifle tightened. He sat there in the glow of the fire, eyes locked on the door, heart pounding in his chest. The night stretched long, but he did not close his eyes. Not once, because outside, hidden by snow and darkness, the hunters were closing in. The storm finally began to calm. The wind still howled across the frozen land, but the heavy pounding of snow against the cabin walls faded into silence. Inside, the fire burned low, shadows stretching long and restless. Daniel sat stiff in his chair, his rifle leaning close, his eyes heavy but unblinking. He had not slept for even a moment. The alien girl lay on the bed, her fever still burning but less violent than before. Her breathing had grown steadier, though every now and then her body shivered like a leaf caught in the wind. He thought the worst of the night was over. He was wrong. It started with a whisper. At first, Daniel thought she was only mumbling in her fever again. But this time the sound was different. Her voice was low and steady, almost too clear. She whispered words in her strange alien tongue, the syllables soft and rhythmic. Daniel leaned closer, frowning. What are you saying? The girl's glowing eyes fluttered open, half closed with exhaustion. She turned her head slightly toward him, lips still moving as if she spoke not to him but to someone else in the dark. Then for a moment, her voice shifted. The alien words broke apart and one word came in English, Watcher. Daniel froze. The word cut through the silence like a blade. He glanced toward the door, toward the window covered in frost. The shadows outside felt heavier, as if something unseen stood just beyond them. Who's there? Daniel whispered sharply, his voice low but tense. The girl's lips trembled. Her glowing marks pulsed brighter as though responding to some signal. She shivered violently and whispered again, her alien words spilling out faster, almost in panic. Daniel's heart pounded. He checked the door again. He could hear it, faint, dragging sounds in the snow. Not footsteps this time. Something slower. Something deliberate. He raised his rifle, pointing it toward the window. But the glass showed nothing, just white snow glowing in the pale light of the moon. The girl suddenly reached out, weakly clutching his sleeve. Her voice cracked as she forced words past dry lips. They see, she gasped. They would find us. Daniel's breath caught. He crouched close, speaking quickly. Who sees us? The hunters? Are they outside? She shook her head faintly, eyes wide, sweat dripping down her silver skin. She whispered again, this time in a voice that was not just weak but frightened. Not hunters. Shadows? Daniel's stomach turned cold. Shadows? He wanted to ask more, but the girl fell back, trembling. She closed her eyes as if the effort had drained her. The glowing lines across her arms dimmed, fading to a faint shimmer. Daniel sat there in silence, the rifle steady in his hands, but his thoughts restless. Hunters, shadows, watchers, whatever hunted this girl, it was more than just men with weapons. Something deeper was at play. The fire cracked, breaking the silence. Daniel forced himself to breathe steady. Fear was dangerous. Fear could break a man before the fight even began. He checked her forehead again. Still hot, though less than before. She needed time, maybe days, to recover, but he doubted they had that long. The sound outside returned. Crunch, drag, crunch, drag. Slow, careful, circling the cabin. Daniel aimed at the door, his finger tight on the trigger, then suddenly silence. He waited. Seconds felt like hours, nothing, no sound, no shadow, only the storm's fading breath. Finally, he lowered the rifle slightly. Maybe his tired mind was imagining things. Maybe the whispers in the storm were tricking his ears. But then, just as his muscles began to relax, a voice spoke from the other side of the door. A whisper. Not hers. Open. The word was faint, distorted, almost broken by the wind, but it was there, clear enough to chill Daniel's blood. He aimed the rifle again, his heart hammering. The girl stirred, her eyes snapping open as if she had heard it too. She sat up weakly, trembling, her glowing eyes wide with terror. Don't, she whispered, her voice breaking. Don't open. Daniel clenched his jaw. Whoever or whatever was outside knew she was here. It knew he was here, and now it wanted in. He tightened his grip on the rifle, refusing to move from the door. His tired eyes burned, but he stayed sharp. The whisper came again, dragging through the cold air. Open. Daniel shook his head firmly. Not a chance. The fire sputtered, casting wild shadows across the cabin walls. The alien girl leaned against the bed frame, staring at the door with fear carved deep into her face. Her glowing marks pulsed faster, like a warning. The storm outside had gone quiet, but the real danger had just begun, and Daniel knew he would not be sleeping. Not tonight, not ever, until he understood what hunted them in the dark. Morning crept over the frozen land like a pale ghost. The storm had passed, leaving behind heavy silence and endless white. The cabin stood small against the snow, smoke rising weakly from its chimney. Inside, Daniel sat by the cold ashes of the fire, his rifle still across his lap. He had not slept. His eyes were red, his body aching, but his mind refused to rest. The memory of that whisper, open, still rang in his ears. He kept glancing at the door, half expecting it to burst open at any moment. The alien girl stirred under the blanket. Her fever had eased slightly, though her skin was still hot to the touch. She opened her glowing eyes slowly, as if waking from a nightmare that refused to end. Daniel leaned close. How do you feel? Her voice was weak, trembling, but clearer than before. Better, but they will come. Who? Daniel pressed. The hunters? The shadows? What are they? She shivered, pulling the blanket tighter. Hunters first, shadows later. Both want me. Daniel's jaw tightened. Why? Her lips trembled. She looked at him, her eyes filled with both fear and shame. Because of what I am. Before Daniel could ask more, he heard it, footsteps crunching in the snow. This time it was no whisper, no trick of wind. Real, solid footsteps drawing closer. Daniel moved quickly, lowering the fire so smoke wouldn't give them away. He crouched by the window and peered through the frost. Figures moved between the trees, 3, maybe 4, tall, wrapped in heavy furs, weapons slung across their backs. Hunters. The alien girl grabbed his arm, panic rising in her weak voice. Don't let them take me, please. Daniel stared at her. He could leave her, hand her over, and end the danger. But the thought of those trembling eyes being dragged away tightened something in his chest. He shook his head. They won't take you. He moved quickly, pulling her from the bed and guiding her toward the storage room. Stay here. Stay quiet, he whispered. She clutched his sleeve for a moment, then obeyed, slipping into the shadows of the small room. Daniel returned to the main cabin just as the knock came. Loud, heavy, demanding. Open up, a voice barked. Rough, commanding, filled with the tone of a man used to obedience. Daniel gripped his rifle, but he did not open the door. What do you want? He called back. We're looking for someone, the voice said. A girl, pale skin, glowing marks, sick. Have you seen her? Daniel's pulse quickened. He forced his voice steady. No one like that here. Silence. Then another voice, sharper, more suspicious. Strange. We tracked her trail to this very cabin. Are you lying, human? Daniel's grip on the rifle tightened. His heart pounded, but he stood firm. I said I haven't seen her. Storm covered plenty of tracks. Maybe you lost her, the hunters muttered among themselves. He caught fragments. Reward. Dangerous. Alive. Finally, the first voice spoke again, lower this time. If you're hiding her, human, it will not end well. For either of you. The crunch of footsteps moved away. Daniel kept the rifle aimed at the door, waiting. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, silence returned. He released a slow breath, but the relief was short-lived. They hadn't left. He could feel it. They were still out there watching, waiting. The alien girl stepped quietly from the storage room, her weak body trembling, but her eyes fixed on him. They won't give up. They know I'm here. Daniel looked at her glowing marks, faint but still alive beneath her skin. You're right. They won't stop. He set the rifle down and rubbed his tired face. So you'd better tell me before it's too late. Who are you really? Why are they after you? For a moment she said nothing, only stared at the floor. Then she whispered, I am not just a girl. I am blood of the High Line, my father. Rules, Daniel blinked. Her words hung heavy in the air. You're? Royalty. She nodded weakly, shame in her eyes. And my father wants me gone. My fever is no sickness, it's what I carry inside. Power. A curse to him. A threat. Daniel sat back, the truth sinking like a stone in his chest. She wasn't just a stranger in the snow. She was someone worth hunting, worth killing, worth whispering about in the dark. And now, by choosing to save her, he had stepped into a war he barely understood. Outside, a hawk cried in the distance. The hunters were still near, hidden in the trees, patient as wolves. Daniel stared at the girl, her silver skin glowing faintly in the dim cabin light. She looked fragile, but behind her fear lay something vast, something heavy with danger and destiny. And he realized with cold certainty, keeping her alive would mean standing against not just hunters, but powers far greater than he had ever faced. The cabin was quiet again, but the silence felt heavy, like a rope tightening around Daniel's chest. The hunters were still out there. He could feel it in the air, like wolves circling, waiting for the right moment. The alien girl sat weakly on the bed, her body trembling from both fever and fear. She had just told him the truth, a truth so sharp that Daniel still struggled to believe it. You're the daughter of a ruler, he said slowly, as if saying the words aloud might make them clearer. Her glowing eyes lowered to the floor. Yes, my father commands many. He calls himself protector, but he fears what he cannot control. And me? She paused, her voice breaking. I was born with something he could not explain. Something he calls a curse. Daniel leaned forward. These markings on your skin? The glow? She nodded. They are not decoration. They are power. Power I did not ask for. When I was young, I healed a dying child by touching him. The sickness left his body and flowed into me. I lived, but my father saw it as dangerous. He said such power does not belong in his bloodline. He sent hunters to erase me before others learned the truth. Daniel's stomach tightened, healing sickness by taking it inside. No wonder she had collapsed in the snow, burning with fever. She was carrying sicknesses that did not belong to her. He looked at her trembling hands, at the faint glow that pulsed under her skin like a heartbeat, fragile and powerful at the same time. So you ran, Daniel said. Her lips curved into a broken smile. I tried. But he has long arms. Hunters follow me wherever I go. They wait until I am weak. Until I cannot fight, Daniel rubbed his tired face. He had thought she was just another stranger, someone caught in the storm. Now he understood. By pulling her out of the snow, he had pulled himself into a fight with rulers, soldiers, and powers far bigger than one man in a wooden cabin. The girl's eyes lifted, meeting his. You should let me go. If you stay near me, you will die. Daniel stared at her for a long moment. Then he shook his head. If I wanted to leave you, I would have done it last night. But I didn't, and I won't. Her lips trembled. For a second he thought she might cry, but she held it in. Instead, she whispered, Why? Because I couldn't live with myself if I left you to die, Daniel said simply. Sometimes doing the right thing is the only choice, even if it costs you. The girl fell silent, staring at him as if searching for something in his face. Finally, she closed her eyes and leaned back against the wall, whispering, Humans are strange. Daniel almost laughed, but the sound of movement outside killed the thought. The hunters were close again. He moved to the window, peeking through the frost. 3 figures stood near the trees, speaking in low voices. One pointed toward the cabin, his hand resting on a long blade at his side. They're not leaving, Daniel muttered. The girl's voice came weak but firm. They want me alive, but they will kill you without thought. Daniel checked his rifle. Not enough bullets for 3 men, especially if they had armor. He thought fast, eyes scanning the room. He had rope, tools, and a few small traps he used for hunting animals. Against trained killers, it was not much. But he had one advantage. They believed she was weak and alone. They didn't know she had someone willing to fight for her. Daniel turned back to her. If they come in, I'll need you to stay hidden. Don't make a sound. Can you do that? She hesitated, then nodded. Another knock thundered at the door, stronger this time. Human, a rough voice barked. We know she is here. Give her to us and we will spare you. Daniel's jaw clenched. His hand tightened on the rifle. He thought of lying again, but the hunters already knew too much. He looked back at the girl, her silver face pale with fear, her glowing eyes begging him without words. He faced the door. I told you before. No one like that is here. The voice outside laughed coldly. You are brave. Or foolish. But you cannot hide her forever. We will return. And when we do, mercy will not be offered again. The footsteps moved away, fading into the snow. Daniel let out a slow breath, but the girl whispered quickly, They don't leave. They wait. They always wait. He knew she was right. The fire crackled weakly. Daniel sat back down, staring at the rifle, his mind racing. He had chosen his side now. There was no turning back. The girl leaned forward slightly, her eyes heavy but filled with something new. Hope. You risk yourself for me, a stranger. Why? Daniel met her gaze. Because maybe you're not just a stranger. Maybe you're the reason I'm here at all. Her breath caught. For the first time, she gave him a small, real smile. But outside, the hunters melted back into the forest shadows, patient as death itself. The secret was revealed, and with it, Daniel knew the fight had only just begun. Night returned, stretching its dark arms across the frozen land. The hunters had not attacked yet, but Daniel knew they were close. Waiting, watching. Every crack of a branch outside made him tense. Inside the cabin, the fire burned low, its warm glow painting the walls in shifting orange. Daniel sat near it, sharpening his knife slowly, more to keep his hands busy than to prepare. Across from him, the alien girl rested on the bed, her breathing steadier than before. The fever had not fully left her, but the worst seemed to have passed. Her glowing eyes followed him quietly. Finally, she spoke in a soft, almost shy voice. You could have given me to them. Why didn't you? Daniel paused, the knife resting in his hand. He looked at her, his face tired but firm. Because I've seen what happens when the strong decide the weak are nothing. I won't be that kind of man. The girl tilted her head, studying him. Humans. You are not like the others I met. Many of your kind look at me with fear. You do not. Daniel gave a small smile. I was afraid, still am. But fear doesn't get to make my choices. I do. Her lips curved faintly, the beginning of a smile. She pulled the blanket tighter around her silver skin. Your fire is strange. It burns here, she said, touching her chest. Not just outside. Daniel poked at the fire, watching the sparks rise. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just too stubborn to walk away. They sat in silence for a while, the crackle of wood filling the cabin. Slowly, the tension between them began to ease. She asked questions. About Earth, about rivers, about trees that grew green instead of white. Daniel told her about summers, about the smell of rain on warm soil, about children playing in fields. Her glowing eyes widened with wonder. It sounds like a dream, she whispered. Daniel nodded. Sometimes it feels like one. But sometimes it's cruel too. Every world is, she lowered her gaze. I wonder if I will ever see your world, or if I will die here hunted like an animal. Daniel leaned forward, his voice steady. Not if I can help it. For a moment silence hung heavy. Then she whispered, You would fight an empire for me? Daniel looked into her eyes, firelight flickering between them. I'm not thinking about empires. I'm thinking about keeping a promise to myself. No one should die alone in the snow. Her eyes shone, and for the first time tears slipped down her silver cheeks. She quickly turned her face away, ashamed. My people would call this weakness. Daniel shook his head. Where I come from, tears mean you're still human. Or still alive, at least. The girl laughed softly through her tears, a fragile sound but real. Outside, the forest creaked under the weight of ice. The hunters were still near, their shadows stretched thin across the snow. Daniel knew the peace inside could not last. But for now, he let himself breathe. Later, as the fire dimmed, the girl leaned forward, her eyes glowing softly in the dark. Daniel, she whispered. He froze. It was the first time she had said his name. Yes? Her voice trembled. If I don't survive, will you remember me? Not as a fugitive, not as a curse, but as someone who tried to be more? Daniel felt a lump in his throat. He leaned closer, his voice steady but low. You'll survive. And if you don't, then yes, I'll remember. But not because of what you are. Because of who you are. She closed her eyes, leaning back, her breathing softening. For the first time since he had found her, she looked almost at peace. Daniel watched her in the firelight, his own exhaustion pressing down on him. He wanted to close his eyes even for a second. But he didn't, he couldn't, because outside, faint in the distance, a horn blew, low and deep, carried on the cold wind. The hunters were no longer waiting. They were preparing. Daniel's hand tightened on his rifle. He glanced back at the girl, sleeping lightly, her glowing skin flickering like embers. The bond between them had been forged in firelight, fragile but unbreakable. And now, with the horn echoing through the night, he knew the test of that bond was coming with the dawn. Dawn arrived, pale and cold, stretching across the frozen land like a thin blade of light. The forest glowed silver under the rising sun, but the beauty of morning carried no peace. From the cabin window, Daniel saw them, dark shapes moving between the trees, slow and careful. The hunters had returned. They were no longer just three. Twice as many now, 6 armed figures spreading out like wolves circling prey. Their furs blended with the snow, their weapons glinted faintly under the light. They were patient, deadly, and certain their quarry was inside. Daniel's grip on his rifle tightened. His jaw set hard. He glanced back at the alien girl, still resting on the bed. She looked at him with wide, glowing eyes, fear written across her face. They are too many, she whispered. You cannot stop them. Daniel forced a grim smile. Maybe not, but I'll make sure they never forget the human who tried. Her eyes shone, a mix of terror and something deeper, respect, maybe even trust. The first knock came, loud, heavy, commanding, human. A voice barked through the cold. You have one last chance. Give us the girl. Open the door and we will leave you in peace. Daniel stood by the door, rifle ready. His heart pounded, but his voice was steady. She's not going anywhere. A harsh laugh answered him. Then you die with her. The cabin shook as something slammed against the wooden wall. The hunters weren't waiting anymore, they were ready to break in. The alien girl pulled herself up weakly, her glowing marks pulsing faster. You should not fight for me. I am not worth this. Daniel turned sharply, eyes burning. Don't say that. You're worth more than they'll ever admit, and if standing with you cost me my life, so be it. For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Then she whispered, her voice trembling but firm. You are not like the others. You carry fire in your heart. My people will never believe it. But I do. The wall cracked as an axe blade struck wood. Splinters flew across the cabin floor. The hunters were breaking through. Daniel moved quickly, pushing the girl back toward the storage room. Stay hidden. No matter what happens, don't come out until it's over. Her hand grabbed his sleeve. They will kill you. Daniel looked at her glowing eyes, then at the door. His voice was steady. Maybe. But I'd rather fall fighting than live as a man who abandoned someone in need. The door shuddered again, the latch splitting. Daniel raised his rifle, breath steady, heart thundering. The final crash came and the hunters burst inside. The first man fell instantly, a shot tearing through his shoulder. Daniel moved fast, ducking low, firing again. The small cabin filled with smoke and noise, wood splintering under stray bullets. But the hunters kept coming, their numbers pressing forward. Daniel fought like a man possessed. Each shot, each swing of his knife, each desperate move was not just for himself, it was for her. For the girl with glowing skin, for the stranger he had chosen to protect. But numbers were against him. A blade slashed his arm, blood soaking his sleeve. He staggered back, panting, as another hunter raised a weapon to strike. Then the light changed. From the storage room, a glow spilled out, bright, pulsing, alive. The girl stepped forward, weak but determined, her marks burning like fire under her skin. No, Daniel shouted. Stay back! But she did not. She raised her trembling hands and the glow surged outward. A wave of blue light swept the cabin, crashing into the hunters. Their weapons clattered to the floor as they staggered back, eyes wide with terror. Some tried to run, but the light wrapped around them, pulling the sickness and pain from their bodies. They fell to their knees, coughing, weak, as if the very strength had been drained from them. The girl collapsed forward, but Daniel caught her, holding her against his chest. Her body shook with exhaustion, but her eyes still glowed faintly. They cannot take me, she whispered. Not while you are here. The hunters scrambled out of the cabin, broken, defeated, their courage gone. The forest swallowed them, leaving silence behind. Daniel held her close, his breath heavy, his body aching from wounds and fatigue. The fire burned low again, filling the cabin with flickering light. You shouldn't have done that, Daniel whispered. It almost killed you. Her lips curved into a faint smile. You stayed awake for me. I could not let you stand alone. For the first time since he had found her in the snow, Daniel let himself smile back. A tired, broken smile, but real. The dawn had come, and with it a choice. He had chosen to fight. She had chosen to trust. Together, they had survived. The hunters would return. Maybe with more. Maybe with worse. But Daniel knew now that no matter what came, he would not leave her side. The girl leaned against him, her glowing eyes closing as sleep pulled her in. Before drifting away, she whispered one last word. Friend. Daniel sat in the broken cabin, bloodied but alive, the rising sun spilling gold across the frozen land. He looked down at her and whispered back, Always. And for the first time in a long while, Daniel believed it.